So their evenings were spent around the fireplace.
Those stories were just part of their life.
It was very adventurous and very scary.
These were my stories. This happened to it was my great-great-grandmother.
Margaret Elizabeth Utley. She was born in Perry County, Alabama in 1835.
I always picture it was wheat. It actually might have been corn. I can't remember what they were having milled, but they had to take something to be milled.
Your father's gone. We are out of cornmeal.
And her mother sent her and her brother, Foster.
So here are these two little kids. The girl is 9, Margaret's 9, Foster is 11.
And it was a long walk.
It took them a while. It took them longer than they thought.
And so it was starting to get dark as they were walking home.
And they heard a cry in the distance.
And Margaret turned to Foster and she said, "There's a baby over there. We've got to go find that baby."
And her brother, he is afraid. He understands that panthers can sound like that when they are crying, and so he thinks it's a panther.
Some people call them panthers, but they were the old cougars.
Foster finally tells Margaret to drop the bag.
He says, "We've got to run."
And so he's trying to hurry her up, and they're really trying to hurry to get home.
So they know that they're about to be eaten by this cougar.
And they're running. Their mother was worried about them because they had taken so long, so she started coming out to look for them.
Their mom had been waiting and watching for them, and so she opens the door.
As the two kids come running in with the cougar right behind them.
The kids get inside, and she shuts the door.
They bar all the windows, close the door, and they keep the children all inside, and they can hear the panther crying outside and trying to get in.
So the panther is circling around, and it goes under. The house is built up on not tall stilts, but it's built up so that there's a crawl space underneath.
And they realized that the panther had gone under the house, and he started scratching at the floorboards. And they could hear him clawing through.
And they're afraid those floorboards are going to give, and so they turn their big table upside down.
Over where the cougar is gnawing and scratching and trying to get in.
And he scratches for quite a while. And he finally leaves.
Father was out of town at the time. He came home later that night.
They turned the table back upright on its legs, and there the cougar had clawed through part of the boards on the floor.
So he had made it through the floor. The panther had made it through the floor to the table.
The father said, we'll worry about it in the morning. And they went to bed, and they could hear the cow crying that night because she hadn't been milked. She was hurting so bad they could hear her throughout the night just crying.
First thing the next morning, Little John goes out to milk the cow. He says there's blood all over the corral, and the calf is gone. The cougars killed the calf and drug it off into the forest.
And so he sends Foster to gather up all the neighborhood men because they're going to go and hunt this panther.
And so Foster says, "I'll get my gun."
And his dad wouldn't let him.
His gun was really old, and so their comment was, you'd never be able to hit anything with that gun.
And his dad says, "Don't be silly." He says, "This is man's work."
And Foster was determined, so when the men left, he followed behind.
And they finally got to a spot where the panther had drugged the calf.
Foster looks up in the tree just above the group of men, and there's the cougar.
And was swishing its tail and looked like it was going to jump down on that group of men.
Foster immediately brings his old flintlock rifle up to his shoulder and squeezes the trigger and kills the cougar dead.
And he did. He shot it and killed it, and it fell out of the tree and landed right down in that group of men.
And so Foster was kind of the hero that day, although I always remember when my Grammy would tell that story, she would make a point that he was punished because he didn't listen to his father. And I always thought that was very nice.
That's the panther story.
These were my stories, and they were stories that my mom grew up on, and they were stories that my Grammy grew up on.
And that was one of my favorite stories growing up.